What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, the bearded dwarven princess in all her glory, and it's fight day because we have another Rings of Power rant. Today, we're diving into this ridiculous notion, and I'm going to quote here that we have to have female orcs because it's part of the necessary adjustments being made for modern adaptation. And I'm going to use air quotes here because this is the quotation. It's part of the necessary adjustments for a modern adaptation that the showrunners claim needs to happen for them to be able to fix Tolkien and write the novel that Tolkien never wrote. Not me, it's them. So let's just take a look at this. So before I get into the quote here at the end, which is this idea that it's a sign that showrunners are paying close attention to the source material while also being willing to make the necessary adjustment for modern adaptation. That's it's not true. It's not true. We're going to dive into this Screen Rant article at large here. But first and foremost, I want to go over to the IGN reveal the other day because this is the first time I've had anything positive to say about the Rings of Power visuals, and that is to say that these orcs look amazing. Like, I criticized the hell out of the CGI for the trailer and a lot of the stills that I've seen from other elements, but this is the first time I've seen some screenshots where I went, this actually looks cool. And this does go back to me saying in a lot of my previous videos that as much as I am scared of what they're doing with the story for this show, and I don't like some of the CGI, I have seen some things that make me go, when I'm watching this to critique it, I guarantee you I will be cringing over the story elements, but I will probably still be able to find some nuggets of the show that appeal to me, even though um, I'm heavily criticizing these things. So these orcs look amazing. Like, just these screenshots, if you've not seen these already from IGN, like this is some really good makeup and visuals. Like, they've done a really, really, really good job. I mean, this is easily. Here's the thing, Peter Jackson's orcs. Some of them were good, some of them were not so good. I don't know if this is Weta doing the visuals on these. This screenshot in particular, which I'll probably end up using for the thumbnail. I love this image, but like that right there, like these are extremely well done prosthetics. So I gotta say, if nothing else, the orcs in this show are looking really, really, really good. Um, that's but the only thing I have positive to say. Let's go back over to the Screen Rant thing. Rings of Power show will feature female orcs. Now, this is where we get this idea. Executive producer Lindsay Weber has made these bold comments about how the Rings of Power, excuse me, yeah, I was just reading what they wrote here. Rings of Power. Yeah, several female orcs. She says there's some female orcs that I truly love, but there's one in particular who's very tall and strong, who has a particularly enjoyable fight with one of our elven characters that I suspect will be, or I hope will be, a favorite among fans. Weber went on to tease that the one orc in particular, whom she believes will be a fan favorite, though she doesn't specify whether or not they will be male or female. That much, audiences will have to wait and see. Large armies of orcs were featured prominently throughout Peter Jackson's films, of course, Helm's Deep being the primary but just also the Uruk-hai. Like, I will say that the Uruk-hai in Peter Jackson's films were very well done. Helm's Deep orcs were great, and then we had the misshapen orc captain guy whose name I forget in Return of the King. But my favorite orcs from the Peter Jackson film are the Grishnag and those guys when they're hauling Merry and Pippin through. Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Like, very interesting stuff here. It Let's see here. Large armies soon after. So Rings of Power is set thousands of years before Helm's Deep, soon after the War of Wrath almost wiped out orcs to the point of extinction. During the Second Age, orcs are much less populous and scrounging for survival, hence their more gauntly appearance. So here's where we get into this fun stuff. Though never before seen on screen or explicitly mentioned in Tolkien's works, the existence of female orcs has long been assumed, given that orcs have the ability to repopulate. So let's just stop here for a minute. Um, we're making a lot of assumptions here. First and foremost, the assumption is being made that orcs reproduce in the same manner that humans and elves and dwarves reproduce, which is through, you know, sexual intercourse. Now, this is also the point where I say, hey, if you like the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can continue to get Rings of Power updates as I bring them to you. And of course, don't forget, I do Mondays in Middle Earth every Monday at 11 a.m. Central here on YouTube if you want to read through The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and the Silmarillion with me as we get towards the Rings of Power show. If you want to drop a super thanks on the video, it's down there. It's a great way to support me as a content creator and say thanks for the content I create. You can also join as a member of the Adventurers Guild down there. There's a lot of cool perks. I also stream every day if you want to come hang out and drop super chats and stickers on those live streams to support this channel. And of course, you can always go to patreon.com/wandering hermits, where my wife and my brother and I are building that world behind me, the world of the Weave and the Void. It's 5th edition tabletop setting, a point and click adventure game, and a book series. So check it all out. Let's get back to the video. Now, one of the things I really liked about Peter Jackson's films is when we saw the birthing of the Uruk-hai, they were bred in an egg sac. Like they were created out of a mixture of dark magic and other creatures. And there have been a lot of people who talk about the idea in Tolkien's books that the original orcs were elves that had just fallen. They had been so corrupted that they were no longer elves, they became orcs. So we are making this article and these comments being made, and I will say that at the very least, they say the existence of female orcs has been assumed, given that they have the ability to repopulate. But that is an assumption. The assumption here is being made that they have sexual intercourse or that they reproduce in the same way that everyone else does, meaning that they are required to have females. But going back to Peter Jackson's films with Saruman creating the Uruk-hai from egg sacs, literally using dark magic to twist existing creatures into something more, we don't know that that's necessarily the case. We don't know that we need a male and a female to actually create the orcs. So this is another example of, and I think the argument could be made, and I am willing to concede this. The argument could also be made that only having male orcs is also making an assumption because we never have been explicitly told how orcs reproduce. That being said, I don't think anyone in past adaptations has ever come out with these bold claims that the changes are being done in an attempt to create necessary adjustments for a modern adaptation. So, to go out on a limb here and poke a little bit of fun at this argument, the idea that there are strong, independent female orcs who don't need no man is defeated if the female orcs are needed to create new orcs because they're going to need a male to reproduce to create more orcs. So they can only be a strong female orc as long as it's not required for them to have a male to reproduce. And if we're using this idea that we have to have a female to reproduce, then you're basing that on human physiology and what we know about how the elves and dwarves and humans reproduce in Tolkien's worlds. Therefore, you're automatically making the assumption that these female orcs can't be strong, independent females because they still need a man at the end of the day to do that job for them. Just wanted to point that out for the sake of the argument, because the argument that's being made here is that these are strong female leads and they need to be represented because that's what's required for a modern adaptation. Just, you know. It says here that while Amazon's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power series may be bucking Tolkien's tradition in other ways, the presence of female orcs definitely isn't an example in and of itself, of course. It's just a sign. It says that the showrunners are playing close to the source material while also being willing to make the necessary adjustments for modern adaptation. I don't know. I keep coming back to why is this being made as an assumption that it's required. It's a required element. We don't necessarily need to know how orcs reproduce. We could easily have female orcs without this need to have a reasoning behind it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's making people like myself concerned. We're not offended. I'm not offended by the idea that there's female orcs. I love the idea of having female orcs. I think it would be really cool to see a female orc naturally represented in the show without there needing to be a forced narrative behind it. Because again, this comes back to that forced woke narrative where the showrunner is making these statements about how it's a necessary adjustment to modernize Tolkien's work. That for me is where I kind of draw the line and say, hey, if we want to have really badass orcs, cool, but we don't necessarily need to have them forced in here at any point in time. Who knows? I don't know. Food for thought. Love to hear your thoughts below. See you next time, everybody.